Well, Jared, welcome today to Talking Tech here at PLUSnxt, and we're really happy to have you here. Welcome to Chicago. We're at Relativity Fest 2025. So I've known you for a long time. I think I started in eDiscovery 2004. I think you did as well.
Yep.
So it's been a while.
It's been a while, but we have stayed in touch.
Yeah, for
over
sure.
those 20 years.
Yeah. And I think we met in 2007. But from a standpoint, why don't you tell us and everyone about your career and what you're doing now? Because I think it's very different than a lot of the market.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
I'm a huge fan of yours, as you know. I've had the great honor of representing you for many, many, many years, and that's a privilege. And I'm really glad you're at PLUSnxt now because I'm a big fan of the brand and a big fan of the company. I've been in eDiscovery staffing for almost 26 years. I got in right when I got out of school in the early 2000s. And since then, I've placed close to 5,000 people across the legal and legal technology ecosystem. I started True Staffing Partners in 2010, and we're about to have our 16-year anniversary. And we focus on all things legal staffing. About 3 weeks ago, we rebranded to TruLegal. And up until then, we were True Staffing Partners. And part of that rebrand is really where we're headed in terms of our focus in staffing, which is a much broader array, starting in eDiscovery. Then we moved into cybersecurity, then privacy, then AI governance. And now we just need to encompass it all as those disciplines continue to merge and as new disciplines begin to emerge in an AI future for the legal technology job market.
That makes total sense. I used to think that eDiscovery, privacy, and cybersecurity were like three legs of the stool.
Yep.
And then I was thinking, well, maybe now it's a four-legged stool with AI. I actually think AI is maybe the top of the table.
Correct.
Or the stool. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, AI is going to have a more broader impact across all jobs in the legal technology and just legal generally ecosystem, whereas cybersecurity, eDiscovery, privacy have had broad implications, but have really created specialization for people to have career focus. AI is not a specialization. AI is going to touch every single job. It is going to change every single job description over the next 3 to 5 years in the legal ecosystem. It is going to change the buying habits of corporate law departments in a meaningful and significant way. It is going to change the services that are offered by law firms and by service providers, whether they're eDiscovery, cybersecurity, legal operations, or other. And that change is going to happen at a much faster rate and pace than any other change we've seen hit the legal talent ecosystem in the last 25 years.
I really agree with that. I think it's interesting from a standpoint. This is the biggest change in technology since people started adopting the internet in the 90s, right?
Yep.
What do you think about we talked about this a little bit the other day about how positioned some eDiscovery people are to take advantage of this opportunity, right? Some people fear it, right? Oh, it's going to change everything. Everyone's going to lose their jobs. We're all going to be, robots to somebody else. But what do you think the eDiscovery people that can take advantage of this opportunity, where their careers going to go?
Yeah. So let me answer that eventually, but let me back into it by saying there's going to be a couple things that happen. The first thing, and we're seeing it happen now, is companies, corporations are going to say, we're laying off staff because we don't need these many people anymore. We've been able to implement AI. And I'll be very candid. In a lot of ways, TruLegal is an example of that. We had 33 employees in 2023 in January. We're down to 18 employees. We're up 20% on top line and close to 440% on bottom line. We're doing something right with AI. It has created more efficiency. But there's no more efficiency with the staff that I have. Now the definition becomes, how are we adding new value? How are we creating new services in order to capture new revenue and retain the customers that we already have? What's going to happen is those people who are laid off as a result of AI displacement are going to have options. One of those options is going to be to upskill. If they upskill, they may be able to re-enter the market at an even higher salary price point than when they left. If they don't upskill, we may find ourselves in a very deep recession in a couple of years, just at a broad global economy, with people getting laid off as a result of AI integration and people being unwilling to reinvent in order to re-enter the workforce. I hope that's not the case, but we're already seeing that play out in eDiscovery careers. I've had more people decide to retire this year in eDiscovery privacy and cybersecurity than in any year I've ever done staffing. Why? It is not going to be an easy task to upskill and up-level into this new world of AI. And a lot of people that have lived through this industry long enough to have reinvented themselves multiple times over the last 25 to 30 years just may not have the energy or desire to do it again. So from a leadership level, I think we're going to see a lot of leaders exit, which is going to create vertical mobility for people to move up. And we're already seeing that happen, particularly at the AmLaw 100. The great Florinda Baldridge is retiring from Norton Rose Fulbright. The great Jeff Pouliot is retiring from Morrison Forrester, and their subordinates are now moving up, and that's creating room for people to move up. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's job in the ecosystem just gets shuffled up. In order to be part of that shuffle, if you're not moving into a vacated leadership position, you are going to need to articulate your value beyond what your value was in 2022 or 2023. And that value is going to be an incorporation of AI skills that goes beyond efficiency, but is actually creating a unique value that either attracts or retains an existing customer. And that doesn't limit to sales professionals. This is everyone in the ecosystem. So I think for eDiscovery people, you've got to be ready to reinvent. You've got to be able to wield these tools that are out there. There is no one tool to rule them all. But since we are here at Relativity Fest, I will say that having Relativity Air experience is going to get you premium compensation, premium job opportunities, and potentially accelerate you above your peers if you have a skill set that they don't using Relativity Air.
No, I agree with almost everything you said there. From a standpoint of, the market changing, eDiscovery is I've always thought of it as a career-long learning. You're always learning something new, the new technology, a new practice, either from the technology that your clients are using or the technology you're using to react, the platform, processing engine, whatever it may be, collection practices or technology. And I find the AI kind of moment to be, it's very different because it's everywhere. Because a lot of technology we've talked about for 20 years just affects us and, one or two other industries. This is being adopted across industries. I saw a statistic that like 87% of global companies are using AI in some form or fashion, which is up 30% in 1 year, right? So from a standpoint of like getting ready for that next thing, I always think is super important. I've been a lifelong learner for a long time. And, from a Relativity Air perspective, I think it's really a huge benefit. A few years ago, I was working in a position where I drove these very large projects with LLMs, and it's very hard and difficult to explain those to people. And now everyone talks about AI. My mother, who's 75, is talking to me about AI. So it's really everywhere in our culture. But I think really the moment for Air is great because it scales up and scales down, and you can save so much money. We put a lot of effort at PLUSnxt into Air for review and privilege. And, we were the first company to get the competency from Relativity for Air for privilege. And it can save so much time. It's speed information. But what I really think it's interesting about is when you start a big case, day one, everyone thinks they know what the issues are, right? Day 37, something pops up. Day 63, day 105. And before, you have all these linear reviewers like, oh, we got to start over. We got to work out, even with Cal and Tar. Whereas the ability to pivot is so different with using Air for both review and privilege. And the money saved is huge.
So a couple of data points that might be interesting to your viewers.
Sure.
The first of which is we did a survey of over 100 litigation support leaders in the AmLaw 200. Roles like you used to have at Buckley, right? 2023, 15% were, of those leaders, they were spending about 15% of their time on AI.
Mm-hmm.
That number, as of 2 months ago, 45%.
Oh.
So exponential increase. If you look in the privacy marketplace with AI governance, which is a little different than AI enablement in legal,
Sure.
separate discipline, but still in the same vein of our conversation. Chief privacy officers, 2023, about 25 to 30% of their time was spent on AI. Now it's almost 80%.
Right.
So there's clearly a necessity for the leaders, whether it's legal privacy, legal compliance, legal eDiscovery, legal ops, the leaders have to be the first ones to really adopt, get buy-in, and then figure out how to either upskill and uplevel their existing staff to retain them, or make some really hard decisions about who to keep and then who to hire in order to get your program to the level that you wanted to perform to add increased value or impact to the business.
Right. We had a big luncheon in DC in July, and what I took away from it was very interesting. We had a couple clients there, and they were talking about how they were pushing in-house counsel, were pushing their law firms, and that some of these in-house counsel are actually in their RFPs. Part of it is, and we've all seen RFPs of different sorts. How are you using AI to save me time, money, and a better product? Right.
Correct.
So do you agree that like most of this is being driven by the client side of it?
100%. And I don't think the eDiscovery community really has absorbed how much change is going to come as a result of downward corporate pressures, whether it's directly from the corporation to a vendor or the corporation to their outside counsel. They are going to be putting immense pressure on every dime, every line item on every bill. Everything is going to be scrutinized. And they're able to do that now thanks to AI with a level of speed and accuracy that was never before plausible. These companies are going to start pushing back on all sorts of egregious spend. They're also going to be pushing back on price points that seem too high for the caliber of service that they're getting, whether it's AI enabled or not. And this is where eDiscovery companies, whether they're vendors or litigation support departments at law firms, have to start thinking about reinventing their internal talent ecosystems to meet the future state needs of what corporate law departments and legal operations professionals are going to force upon them, which is going to be very different than what they're used to. I'll give you a very banal example. I have a client who admitted to me yesterday, they now use AI to go through every bill and take out the word data processing. Because if the word data processing is listed as a line item on any hourly bill rate, their customers are going to say, we're not paying for that. Why are we paying for data processing?
Right.
We shouldn't have to pay for data processing. Take it off the bill. Now imagine if everyone in the eDiscovery ecosystem has to take eDiscovery processing off of every bill that they send. What happens?
Sure. It's just another compression of the market for eDiscovery, right? From hosting to processing, production work. Right.
But here's good news. Here's the good news.
Sure.
The eDiscovery leaders, particularly at the AmLaw, are no longer being expected to just do eDiscovery. They're being tapped to lead internal efforts to deploy and develop bespoke AI solutions for their customers through their law firm. Why? Why them? Why not KM? Why not IT? Why are eDiscovery leaders being tapped for this? They know how to drive a business that drives revenue. They know how to drive profit centers. And this AI opportunity for law firms is the first thing, in my opinion, since eDiscovery and Lit Support at the turn of the millennia, that can be an impactful driver of top-line revenue and client acquisition and profit that is not a billable hour by a lawyer.
For sure. We talk to boutique law firms and mid-sized firms about our eDiscovery business solutions, right? And I think those, and you see in the stats where those firms are lagging behind the big firms, but I think there's such an opportunity to leverage their unique talents and ability to pivot compared to a large firm that, it's been very fruitful for us talking to these firms that specialize in a very narrow practice or they have very big clients, but they're a mid-sized firm, to really help them take their practice from, hey, we have some people that do a little bit of work for our clients, to how are we going to price it? How are we going to manage it? We have one person at a firm, like a large boutique firm in California that has 50 cases, and that's being run by one person.
Wow.
So Rel 1 and AIR really allow, those two things together really allow you, for a law firm or a corporation, to take command and control of your program.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that work, your team is doing that work. You have more understanding of it, transparency of it, better better customer service to your end client. I just think you're so right, where it's such a big opportunity of using AI to build a model for your practice.
Yeah.
You do financial services work, or maybe you have a construction firm that you do
Yep.
certain types of cases over and over again. You pair that with Rel One, the ability to be like, okay, we can have, for our corporation that's a construction company, we can have all our law firms use our Rel One. We know where our documents are. It's not going outside to many different vendors and platforms. And then when we have experts, be it a soil expert, constructional expert, they can log into that too. So we're not making copy after copy after copy of our most important and sensitive material. So it goes to security, privacy, control, cost, ROI.
I mean, look, Brian, let me comment on a couple of things you just said.
Sure.
The first of which is you've got one person running 50 cases. If you had said that to me in 2007 when we met each other, you would have said, this is complete insanity.
You couldn't do it.
You couldn't do it. I remember when TAR really hit and people were saying to me, okay, what used to take 5 people now takes 1. I think the ratio I'm hearing now is what used to take 15 to 20 attorneys now takes 1 if they're AI enabled. So there is some correlation between attrition of staff and consolidation of skill sets in high-paid, high-powered individuals. However, I very much don't like the rhetoric of, hey, we've enabled AI and so we're cutting headcount. The reason this rhetoric has gained such popularity in mainstream media is because the highest cost for any corporation is their people.
Sure.
And so when you tell the world, we've cut all these people and we've got AI, the play is to get more investment, right? People are going to spend more money on my stock, or I'll be able to get more external investors, or I can go to a series, whatever, right? Because I've shown that I can cut cost. But what about the reverse of that? Where instead of people not being able to upskill and getting cut, they all upskill. And now the opportunity of, well, we've got 20 people here and we're going to go down to 1 changes to, we've got 20 people here and we're going to go to 1,000 cases.
Right.
And as employers start considering that opportunity, they will start to be able to more accurately assess who in their internal talent ecosystem is worthy of future investment, has the interest, the capability, the aptitude, the desire, the know-how to be somebody that can be a multiplier of 20 times X.
Sure. I agree with that. We talked about that at our tech series at ILTACon, right? Where this is actually going to accelerate litigation as well, right? It's not just from
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually, right? So you're going to be responding to more of it. You're going to be analyzing more data, right? Because that cost is going to go down,
Yep.
Which brings up other issues, and it's going to require more expertise for those specialized, most gnarly documents or issues that come up. It's the thing about having the right people that are going to want to take on that challenge to improve not only themselves but the organization, your team, and your process is really key. And it's so important to have that mindset when you're taking on a new technology or a new service, right? Or trying to build a new service.
Yeah, I hope what you said is true, in that I hope people go about their employment, whether it's with an existing employer or with a search for a new one, with the attitude and energy of, what can I do to make an impact on this business? How can I contribute to the business? Unfortunately, what we hear a lot from job seekers, particularly the younger generations, is they are very focused on what the businesses are going to do for them and for their careers and for their bottom line. And that can be the kiss of death on an interview process.
Sure.
Most hiring managers are looking for people that come into an interview from a perspective of how I'm going to impact the business, not how the business is going to impact them. And so I encourage job seekers to redirect that thinking. And then I want to touch on one other thing you said, because if we're talking real future state, Brian, and I've already used the example of a client saying people won't pay for data processing. And we've already talked about the multiplier of 20 down to 1, and that 1 being a 20 times X multiplier. What happens when we just stop copying and moving documents and metadata around? What happens when governance programs in corporations become so sophisticated and so capable that we no longer need to discover anything and move it? We just tell them where to go look, They can review the documents where they stand and then send the reporting accordingly. I don't know that we're too far from that future state. When we look at what's happening in the governance market, with AI governance, with information governance happening in corporations, the investments that are being made, I don't want to claim that they're being made to eliminate eDiscovery, because I don't even think they're considering eDiscovery some of the time.
Sure.
But they are considering, how do we access and govern our data in a way that makes it instantly accessible, authentic, and accurate, and doesn't need to be moved around, duplicated, or
Right.
put at risk because of whatever subpoena or investigation or request that they may or may not get. And I think that eDiscovery professionals would be wise to start leveling up not only in AI, but in governance, because governance is probably going to be the future state of eDiscovery. And we've all been talking about it for 20 years,
Sure.
but AI may be that inflection point that gets us there.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I always thought that eDiscovery and data governance, and I've done data governance work in my career, is a lot of the things are similar. You know, you're doing a data map, you're trying to figure out those problems, those issues. And I see that the AI, you know, right now everyone's talking about for review, right?
Right.
You're going to be using that for data identification, data monitoring, data extraction of certain types of documents. And it's going to move from the right side of the EDRM to the left. I mean, that's just inevitable, right?
Correct.
And, you know, you can automate a lot of things as well. So instead of having people doing collections that are different from people processing data to reviewing.
Collections?
Yeah.
Are we going to do collections in 10 years?
Not maybe of mobile
I'd be
devices.
shocked.
Yeah.
Maybe of mobile devices.
Right. I mean, because everything is a mobile device at some point.
Yeah, but eventually isn't all of that information going to be on a server somewhere that the company hosts that they can point an arrow to and say, go look at this?
Yeah. And yeah, that's a very good point, because from a standpoint, you're not going to have from backups, people are going to pull, you know, from their cloud or wherever they're storing their data. Well, you're here at RelFest, and I wanted to ask, I think you're speaking at an event, right?
I spoke yesterday.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
Checked that box. It was a good and powerful event of leaders in the AmLaw 200. A lot of truth to power about what's happening in the marketplace.
Sure.
But you had a question. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask from a standpoint of where do you see, you know, because you're known for helping people with their careers and you've helped your organization grow. It's very interesting. You know, I've worked with a lot of recruiters, my different hiring roles over the years, and you're the only one I can think of off the top of my head after thinking about it for a week that have kind of scaled their past just a few people. What do you tell someone who's new trying to get into eDiscovery? Because that's kind of we hear all these stories. I didn't want to do this, or I didn't know about it, and I fell into it. What are you saying to people that are wanting to get into eDiscovery?
Well, first of all, thank you. We're very proud of our scale. And yes, we are a lot bigger than any would-be competitors, both in terms of revenue and in terms of human capital in our organization. So thank you for recognizing that. Here's the advice, and Relativity will appreciate this too. Get your certs.
Sure.
The fastest way to get a job in eDiscovery is to go get Relativity certifications. Those carry a lot of weight with hiring managers, particularly the RCA. We have a Relativity self-assessment that we developed in concert with Relativity and Danielle Urban, who runs their certification program, who's amazing. And it's a 65 question check your proficiency. So 65 different skill sets that Relativity thinks this is what customers should be assessing when hiring talent for Relativity. The job seekers list: no experience, some experience, advanced experience, and expert level experience. And we aggregate all that data to come up with tremendous analysis. And if you want that reporting, I'll share it with you. But here's the big takeaway. In the last 4 years, we've had over 2,500 applicants. And it is very clear that those applicants are heavy with some experience, meaning most people out there in the ecosystem that are looking for work have enough experience to do their job. There are less than 5% of people that are expert and less than 3% of the job seekers that are master.
Mm-hmm.
Of the 92% that are left, less than half of them have their RCA. So if you're looking to immediately increase your compensation, break into the industry, go get your Relativity certs, chase the RCA, because that will be the most valuable to you. But on your way to chasing that, look, Get your processing cert, get your Rel 1 cert, get your review cert, get your Gen AI cert. That one's super cheap and super easy. It's a great way for somebody that's like right out of school or looking to get out of being a paralegal or a legal assistant. Go get that, because just having that will allow you to talk intelligently, even if you haven't had the practical hands-on experience using the tool. After that, I encourage people to go get ACED certification. ACEDS is really what I consider to be the education that gives you the nomenclature and the foundation to have a career in eDiscovery, and Relativity is the vocation that gives you the actual day-to-day, hardcore, hands-on skill sets to become a billable resource to a law firm or a vendor or a cost reduction for a corporation.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Jared, thank you so much for coming today. Always good to see you. Enjoy the rainy weather here in Chicago.
Yes, sir.
Safe flight home, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Brian.